Okay, morning, folks. Welcome to what looks like out the window a bright, sunny day, and hopefully a reasonable gliding day. So this is the overnight chart, and you can see the cold front that gave us the rain yesterday, just slowly pulling away from us and then drifting out over the North Sea to the near continent. And we're in a slot between this cold front here and the developing low pressure system, which is going to slowly track over northern France and give us some rain and strong winds tomorrow. And just very, very briefly, this is what the tomorrow forecast looks like. That really does develop very, very quickly, intensifies. And you can see we're in an easterly airflow. They're talking about possible gusts, easterly 40-knot gusts tomorrow. So I think tomorrow, honestly, is a bit of a write-off. Winds today, light westerly. North of us, like 10 knots. Seem to be the general forecast. Just the south, along the south coast, a little bit stronger, a little bit more southwesterly in the wind, but fairly light all day. Maybe picking up a little bit towards the end of the day. Probably when we finish flying, as things start to change. Sat pic shows that slot that we're sat in, and you can see this developing weather system out here with some upper cloud, and that's on the infrared, quite obviously beginning to track in this way and possibly cut across the west of us mid to late afternoon, killing the soaring conditions a little bit early out to the west. But it should, say, remain reasonably clear for most of the day. That's the rainfall chart. Obviously there's the rain out to the west and the beginnings of development of the low pressure system. These showers, I think, will dry themselves out and just disappear for most of the day. We might see the odd small shower just develop and drift past us in the afternoon. And you'll see why that's going to happen when we look at the ascents. So temperature wise, I think 15 degrees, which is 15, maybe 16 is about average for this time of year over us by early to mid-afternoon, and with dew points down around 7 degrees. You should hopefully see cloud base 3,500 to 4,000 feet by 1 to 2 o'clock. Things start to change a little bit out to the west after that. So the soundings show that if you plug and put in the temperatures and dew points, it's sort of saying around about 3.5, maybe a little bit higher with those sort of temperatures by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. But by sort of 4 o'clock, the picture of the sounding changes, because you can just see on this one, there is a small amount of inversion, keeping the sort of cloud development down to about tops at 8,000 feet. But as the afternoon goes on, it begins to sort of destabilize and the inversion disappears. And this is pretty unstable all the way up to 15,000 feet plus. So there's certainly potential for a shower later on in the afternoon. The actual Lark Hill ascent doesn't really show much apart from an inversion sat here at about 10,000 feet and fairly unstable and quite moist air below it. Bear in mind that this was sent up probably fairly close to when the front was clearing through this morning. So it just gives you an idea of what the air is like, but it is changing during the day. Top meteo showing that things are not really going to get going until about 12 o'clock. And I think that's probably right. Looking out the window now, we're just gone 9:30. We're still got lowish scudding cloud going past, and I think it'll take time to dry out and build things up. So I wouldn't really worry about being ready before 11 o'clock, and I suspect most people will be launching by 12. So at 12 o'clock, they're talking about cloud base between sort of 800 and 1,000 meters, 2,500 feet plus, and then getting better as the afternoon goes on. So by 2-3 o'clock, 1,500-1,600 meters around here, slightly lower out to the west and north, but generally pretty good in this area here. Out in East Anglia, it doesn't seem to be changing much during the day, and I think that's still the influence of the frontal system that's sort of lingering out here. So in the afternoon, still remaining good for a few hours till 3-4 o'clock, and then we start to see it deteriorating from the west. I think if you plan to be flying by 12, half 12, and back here by 4 to 4:30 at the latest, you'll be about right to use the best part of the weather window, because I suspect it's going to, by 5 o'clock, be closing down fairly quickly. So good little weather window that we can use. Hopefully we'll get something decent out of it. I think it'll be good for a couple of 100K. And the suggested distance and area is really to the west and northwest, maybe into Wales. You certainly should get drier air around Wales than the lee of the mountains. So it could be quite reasonable in that area. Right, operationally, we're on 2.7. No jet movements.
No, Navajo in at 1:30.
Okay, so possible Navajo. The timings on those tend to be a bit hit and miss. No grid, folks. Just come out to the runway when you want to launch, and we'll throw you into the air. I suspect that's going to be around 12 o'clock, more towards 1 o'clock, the best part of the day. Airspace wise, really, really quiet locally to us. Parachuting at Western on the green, but that's 6 o'clock tonight till 11 o'clock in the evening. So they're doing night jumps for the military. And although people are not going to be going to Gransden and that area, Little Gransden still have this aerobatic NOTAM, and I see it's been renewed and it's now till the 6th of November. I'm just looking at Jordan. I didn't think they could issue NOTAMs for long periods like that.
They can, but it's not supposed to be that way.
It's not supposed to, yeah.
We don't do that.
We don't do that. We issue them on a daily basis, and we have issued a NOTAM for today. One other thing that's going on locally, the military have an aircraft operating in and around Odium for a couple of hours between sort of 10 and 1 o'clock, and it's called a Defender. I asked the pilot what a Defender actually is, and he didn't know what the civilian type of the aircraft is. It's an Islander, a small to medium-sized twin, operating locally around Odium, both in and out of the ATZ. So keep a good look out if you are flying locally for that floating around. Apart from that, folks, that's pretty much it. We'll see you out on the runway, get you a launch when we want to go.
It says no flying